Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for the latest GoSkills Challenge solution. How did you do? Well, we're about to find out. Our Excel expert Claudia Buckley has her solution to share. Give it a look and see if yours matches up.
So how did you do with this pivot chart challenge? Here's my method. From anywhere inside the data table, go to Insert and click Pivot Chart. On older Excel versions, you might have to go to Recommended Charts instead and look for one that has a little pivot chart icon. Make sure that the right range is selected. In our case, the database is a table called T subs, and we'll select the location where we'll want to place this chart. So let's say New Worksheet. And when we hit OK, what happens is we get a frame for a pivot chart, but it automatically also creates a frame for a pivot table too. Let's name these right away before we forget. So for the chart, let's call it C_summary and enter. And for the table, let's call it T_summary and enter. Now to create the actual chart. This is easier than it looks, guys. We know that we'll want the level information and the country information summarized. So we check both boxes, level and country. And when we click on those, we do see them showing up on the table over here. But we need to find a way to count them. Now, what value do we have that appears for each customer record? Well, there's more than one. We have account numbers, names, dates of birth, and a few more. Let's use account number because we know that these are unique values. So now these are all checked, but the chart frame doesn't have any actual data on it. And by looking at the pivot table over here, we can see why. We want to summarize the account numbers. So we drag the account number field from here over to the summary values area over here. So notice it says now we're counting account numbers, which is exactly what we want. And wow, look at our chart. It makes all the difference. So the chart is reflecting exactly what's on the table. So let's change the name of the field so it makes more sense to someone who's looking at it. Let's call this field number of accounts. And every good chart has a title. So let's call it number of accounts by level. And that's our chart title. And let's do one more thing before we go into any more detail with this chart. We'll add data labels to the columns so that our boss can see the numbers. So we can click on the columns here, and we can go right over here and add data labels. Perfect. Let's just drag to make our chart a little bigger. Nice. So now how can we give our boss the flexibility to remove a country or a level from the display and quickly add it back? Well, there are a couple ways to do this. So he can use the axis field buttons as filters right here. Let's say he doesn't want to see the premium. So now we're only seeing the basic for each country and the standard. And the same applies to the country. If we only want to see United States, then we see that these filters can be applied right here. All right, so let's go right back, select all, so we're seeing everything. Here's another way we could do this. He could also use the expand and collapse buttons to view the totals based on the first grouping. In this case, our first grouping is the level. So if we wanted to collapse, then we're only seeing the total by each number. And this corresponds to the numbers that we see if we were to collapse those levels over here. And by the way, remember that you can change the parent row by moving the order of the fields in the row area. So let's do that here. Let's go back to expand the entire field. If we drag this here and put the country on top, then notice that the country becomes the parent field, and that's what shows up here. So then when we collapse, we'd be viewing by country total instead of by level total. Pretty cool. But if you think having to filter by the axis label fields is a bit too clunky, then we can use a slicer to make the filters more visual. So let's go back and expand. And the reason for this is, let's say that we were using the axis filter fields. When we look at this chart, we can see that a filter is applied, but it doesn't tell us what values we're actually seeing. We'd have to click and expand to take a look at what was filtered out. And if we had a chart with lots of fields, that's really not ideal. But if we used a slicer, that would be a whole lot better. So we can just click on our chart, go back to Insert, and click Slicer. Now we just need to select the fields that we want to be able to do the segmentation by, and we will have an unscreen filter to apply to our chart. So if we wanted to filter by level and by country, and we can even filter by a field that isn't displayed on the chart. So let's say that field could be the state or province, all right? And we hit OK. So now we have those 3 slicers. All right, and it's a good idea to put our slicers where they're visible. So let's put them all together here. And we can resize the slicer by just dragging on these handlebars here. Let's put our state and province here. And because we have so many states and provinces here, we can change the number of columns. Let's make this 3. So that everything is visible. And now we have an unscreen filter that we can apply to our chart. Remember that before we created our slicer, we did filter out the premium level. So that's this one. We can close this panel. And now we're looking at everything that's on the chart. Let's say we didn't want to see the number of subscribers from Florida and New York. Right now, everything is selected, so it's showing up in blue. If you're on an older version of Excel, to select more than one button on your slicer, you'd hold down the Control key and hit FL and NY. So now we've removed the number of subscribers from these 2 states. But on versions of Excel after 2016, there's this little multi-select button that if you're going to select more than one item, then you just hit multi-select and select more than one button at a time. So now we're seeing everything again. And how about getting the subscription levels to show up in the order basic, standard, then premium? Easy. Just click the one you want to move, like this one, premium. Go to the outer edge where you can see the 4 directional arrows like this, and drag to where you want it to go, right here. So now we're seeing basic, standard, then premium. See? Pivot tables and charts aren't as intimidating as they may seem. Keep practicing and head over to our Slack channel and let us know what you think about pivot tables and charts.
So there it is. Did you get the same results? Did you use the same approach? Or did you try something different? We'd like to know. Share your take on the challenge in the comments below or join us for more discussion in our Slack channel. Link in the description. Thanks for participating, and make sure to subscribe to this channel to get an alert when the next challenge is released. We'll see you then.